Hi, everybody. This is Jim Prusak from the Pain PT, and I'm here today with Rebecca Tolin, who some of you may have seen, know, heard of. She's an awesome human being and a friend of mine now, I could say. So, Rebecca, thanks for coming on again. We're gonna talk some shop today. We're gonna talk about all the stuff I've been talking to you guys about on my YouTube channel. Rebecca's a great resource. She's got through her own she has her own recovery story that's really profound and inspirational. And she's actually launched a new course, which I'm super excited about and stoked about. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But Rebecca, thanks for coming on today.
Jim, it's so good to see you again. I truly owe my recovery to you. And the last time we spoke was, well, a few years ago after had recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome. And it was after working with you one-on-one for about 8 months. We're lucky enough that we live in the same town. And at that time, before the pandemic, got to work together. And
I
you were
know.
just such a profound influence on me, the way you present the knowledge in this very clear, kind, compassionate way, and the way you focus on somatic sensations and meditations, and that just so resonated with me. So
You
it's
know, thank
exciting
you.
to be back a few years later.
Yeah, it's great
Yeah.
to connect. And I was thinking about that the other day too, how, pre-COVID times we actually worked together in person and now everything moved to the Zoom platform. But you're probably one of the last people I worked with in person before COVID hit and
Yeah,
moved over. So
a different era. I'm glad we snuck in.
glad we snuck in. So yeah, let's dive in. So maybe I know not everybody maybe knows who you are. I mean, a lot of people do because you've shared your story, which is really an amazing recovery, but maybe share a little bit about, what you went through and your bit of your recovery, because I think that's really the starting point, right, for you from where you got to
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Well, because I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, now it's been about 16 years ago. But I had been through a really traumatic event and then I fell really ill. I mean, I just felt like I had the flu all the time. I couldn't sleep. I was in my early 30s and I had been a TV news reporter, and I really just had a total crash where I could hardly leave the house. And I went to all the doctors, all the healers, 50 practitioners over 13 years. And I was really looking at it as a physical illness. And of course, that's what I was hearing from doctors, is that the chronic fatigue syndrome, what's now called ME/CFS, is caused by viruses, Epstein-Barr, faulty mitochondria, genes, all kinds of things like that. And so I did everything from, intravenous antiviral medications, which made things much worse, to all kinds of energy treatments. And not surprisingly, it didn't work. And so I did start turning to some psychotherapy, and that was helpful to work with the trauma. But as you talk about, like the therapists for the most part and doctors haven't really integrated the way they view these things, that these symptoms are actually repressed emotions. They are, in my case, trauma in the body. And so I still kind of was stuck in this silo. And over time, I just started meditating and doing gentle yoga, and I would feel a little bit better. That's kind of the only thing that would help, but being in nature. And I couldn't work. I'd been on disability for years at this point. Um, and then I had a real breakthrough when I had kind of stopped trying to fight my body and to force myself back into wellness. I just kind of accepted the situation. I met a woman we both know, Kathy, who told me about the mind body work, about John Sarno and Howard Schubner, and how she specifically overcame chronic fatigue syndrome through this work. And I had to hear that because I knew of Sarno's work. I had read Healing Back Pain for my mom and thought, well, that makes sense. But I hadn't read the mind body prescription. And, of course, he doesn't go in depth into chronic fatigue syndrome. So that was a light bulb moment. I had like what seemed like a spontaneous remission where I started running around the block when I just
Remember
realized
that.
I'm not sick. I'm not sick.
Right.
This is neural pathways in the brain. It's repressed emotions in the body, right? And you would remember that because I
Oh
called
yeah.
you shortly after that,
Yeah.
right?
I
Yeah.
remember, I don't know if I was working with you yet, or maybe we were started, but I do remember that. And you just had like such a burst of energy. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe it. I went out today and did all this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, Becca, that's amazing. Like, what happened to you?
I had been, like homebound and at times bedbound. And it was incredible just from the knowledge to get that burst of energy. Because I had been so led to believe I was so compromised and I had to be so careful with my system. So it was like she handed me this get out of jail free card. But
Right.
then, as we know, there's these learned neural pathways in the brain. And the longer you've been living in this very restrictive way, I think that the deeper the grooves can be. And so I called you. I think you were actually traveling in Mexico at the time.
That's
I think
right.
you were engaged to your wife, your now wife, or something. And I
Oh
said,
yeah. I was
Jim,
actually yeah, I would have been in Mexico probably planning our wedding at that time.
yes. And I was like, come back. You've got to help me. I think Howard Schubner told me about you. He said, oh, well, you've got to contact Jim Prusak. He's in San Diego.
That's right.
So then, because of course my symptoms did come back after that burst of energy, and you and I worked together maybe 8 months or so. And I really feel over those months I recovered. I mean, I made almost a full recovery, and it was incredible to go from being in the house, not being able to work, to traveling again, to working again. I went to school to become a coach, and yeah, and I just so appreciate all those months, like your compassion, and you held a lot of space. And even though I didn't come to you and say, I want trauma counseling, I actually feel the space you held for the sensations that would kind of shapeshift into anger, into shame, um, were really cathartic and kind of released a lot from my system. And then I learned how to do those somatic meditations myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you really, and for people listening, Rebecca really embodied the practice. I really feel like you took it, you had a background already, like you said, into that was one of the first things that helped you, right? Was meditation and relaxation. So you saw the benefit. And then you really were able to take it to another level. And now you're taking it to another level. And not only did you recover, but for those who don't know, Rebecca is a coach now, and she helps a lot of people. And so she's taken her recovery and transformed it into helping other people, which I think is so awesome. We need so many more people doing this work. There's not enough people out there. And you've developed this course that we're going to talk a little bit about. That for those of you listening, we're going to talk about this course. It's going to be amazing because I've been talking to Rebecca behind the scenes. She's been putting so much energy and work into it. And
Mm.
so maybe just share, we're going to share a couple little nuggets or things today that help you and that you also use to help other people. And maybe share a couple of these things about how you address the chronic fatigue and related symptoms like brain fog, because that's what you were going through and that's what you see a lot of. So maybe share with the audience a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, because Jim, when I came to you and you just helped me experience fatigue as, heaviness or weakness or just a sensation in the body rather than this label of chronic fatigue syndrome. Um, but what I really have found since then is that most people that come to me have fatigue as a primary complaint. And they so often say, well, the Curable app or a lot of resources out there talk more about pain. So, and that's natural. There's a lot of chronic pain, but
Right.
but they get stuck. Like, how do I actually apply this to fatigue? And over the past few years, I've sort of developed a two-pronged answer to that. And the first part of that is, you treat it exactly the same as any other mind-body symptom, whether it's lightheadedness or insomnia or pain or fatigue. Um, and all the principles you work with, Jim, right? Like really tuning into what's happening emotionally, because there's some underlying emotional response that's triggering these symptoms, and just asking yourself and sitting with those sensations and retraining your brain that these sensations are safe. And then, of course, shifting as you learn the knowledge, you shift your thoughts and beliefs about what's happening in your body and what you're capable of. And then really shifting your whole way of living and your behaviors. And challenging those triggers, stepping out and doing the things that cause symptoms with
Right.
outcome independence. So
Yeah.
that's all right. Like that's like so much of what you taught me. I'm not
Right.
saying anything you don't
No,
teach.
it's the same stuff, right? And you just like me went on the train, so we learned the stuff, and then you've done a lot of other trainings too to supplement, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and also one thing so there's like a couple things I'll say. One thing that started really interesting me is also with a lot of people you see, there is a message in these symptoms, right? The symptoms are telling us to take better care of our body or create boundaries in our life or our relationships or stop beating ourselves up or criticizing ourselves so much. So it's sort of tuning into what's the message, like what are you exhausted of in your life or what's depleting you. So with fatigue, what's draining you? Because a lot of times it's like we're doing things unknowingly or knowingly that are draining us of energy. And so really shifting it to bringing awareness, bringing mindfulness to that, changing what we can, and cultivating activities that give you energy, give you vibrancy, and you're big on that too, I know, because we all try so hard to heal and it can become really hard work. And then that's further draining the system. So that's
right.
like another piece I focus on a lot. But then what started happening is, I was working with a lot of people who were coming to me with chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia. And although fibromyalgia has more pain, but some fatigue. And now long COVID, I've been working as a consultant on a clinical trial, maybe we'll talk about later, on long COVID with through a physician at Harvard Medical Center. And so there's all these people that are struggling to apply it. And I would notice it works for some of them and not for others. And why is that? And I always want to know why and what are the missing pieces. And I do think, trauma is present for some of us that we may need to work more one-on-one with in a safe situation. But also, I started studying the nervous system and polyvagal theory described by Stephen Porges. And so there's like these three different states of the autonomic nervous system in the way he describes polyvagal theory. And in ventral vagal, we're in social engagement, we're balanced, we're calm, we're clear thinking. One step down the ladder, when we start getting really stressed, we go into sympathetic activation, right? And that's flight or fight. And that's when our system thinks there's a danger, but we can either outrun it or outfight it. And of course, we know these dangers are usually emotional and mental, not physical in our modern world. And so my kind of working theory is a lot of people in chronic pain are in that sympathetic activation. But then when and now this is of course the unconscious mind, the brain stem and the nervous system through neuroception deems the threat is so great, it's life threatening that you cannot outrun it and you cannot outfight it. Now it could be a trauma, like I went through an assault, but it might just be that you feel trapped in a relationship or at work or in your home situation. So then your system goes into what's called dorsal vagal shutdown or collapse. And the symptoms, when you read the symptoms of that state, they're chronic fatigue, lethargy, depression, lightheadedness, brain fog. Of course, digestion is not
Right.
working optimally. Everything's just shutting down. And the reason I think this is helpful to know with treating chronic fatigue as a mind-body symptom is that state benefits from slightly different approaches and stimulation than the sympathetic activation does.
Right. Making the distinguishing between those states is important.
Yeah, exactly. So I started finding with myself in kind of the later pieces of my healing and then clients and students that what's really helpful with the dorsal vagal, I mean, when the system's really in this state of collapse or shutdown or freeze, um, is actually we need gentle stimulation. You can't really handle the kind of movement that someone in sympathetic activation could, where maybe they need a lot of vigorous movement to get out that fight energy. But really gentle stimulation, movement's really helpful, but slow, whether it's Tai Chi or yoga or walking, also, there's lots of different sort of tools you can use of sound, whether it's music or making sounds like humming and making the VU sound is something Peter Levine talks about. Anything that kind of activates this vagus nerve, it can bring us into social engagement, can be helpful. Talking with someone or even listening to a podcast. So just ways, sometimes even cold showers or ice or ways to gently stimulate the body, because no amount of rest is going to do it. And I tried to rest for 13 years. You just get more and more small and exhausted and collapse. So you actually kind of do need to challenge and create movement, but in very slow, gentle steps for most people.
Right. And I've seen that many times too, where people go into vigorous movement, and on the paper it doesn't seem like much at all, but they'll get really whacked with reactions and symptoms. And right, too vigorous, too much, too fast. So it's like, knowing that person who we got to take it slowly, gently. You do have to move, like you said. We got to start moving forward. We don't want to be stuck. But it's like, again, like you said, how you approach that movement or path forward.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, you're really gifted at sort of knowing what that is. And whether or not we're explaining this to people in terms of polyvagal theory, you just kind of work with where the person's at. But someone who's in this kind of shutdown state and experiencing post-viral symptoms and fatigue, they see a recovery story where it's like, oh, but that person just, kept running, or they kept riding through their pain and it worked. Why isn't that working for me? You're in a different nervous system state. It's like your brainstem, your nervous system, it really thinks there's a danger, and we want to just keep creating safety. And also, of course, a new set of knowledge that you're not in danger, and here's really what's happening in your system.
Yeah. So important, so important. And you learn by working with people, because sometimes people say, oh, I did this, and then I say, okay, well, go slowly. And I had a person I talked to the other day about this, and she just doubled up her distance. Oh, I'm feeling good, and then crashed, huge crash. Feeling worse than before. Even though I always say it's not really a setback, it just was too much stimulation for the system to handle. And so it is a learning curve, right, for people to work with going forward.
It is. I mean, like, as we're working with people to try to teach them to see the signs, because the thing is too, there's usually early warning signs like before a crash, and it's sort of looking, does the mind just start to really race? Do you start just really thinking a lot and ruminating and not being able to feel your body? Just recognizing those early signs that your system doesn't feel safe, and so it might not be a time to challenge as much as come back to safety. And then when there's a little more sense of safety, then we want to keep challenging. But then when there's like overwhelm and you kind of learn your own signs, then you want to kind of come back to safety before you do that. So it is, it's a tap dance, and we all kind of overstep and have those crashes, but and that's okay. You can learn,
okay,
right? That's how you learn, when you have the symptoms and you don't freak out about them, which I know is
that's the learning experience. It really is. I had one, just to share quickly, one patient who that happened to, and we did very little stimulation, but she had like a dissociative experience where her system was shutting down. And even in that moment, we were able to stay. We were able to stay together in the session and create some safety through that experience. And she was able to really get through that. So it was this shutting down, like you said, but she was able to get through and keep some of her mind online and some safety there. So it was kind of cool to see that she didn't go into a full shutdown. She was able to come out of it. So it was kind of,
and I think like you were, a co-regulating presence, like when you have another person who has a regulating nervous system, that can be so healing. And then that, it sounds like that was a corrective experience, because she started to experience it and then didn't fully fall down into it. And that's ideal, right? Because that's how we keep retraining our brain.
Yeah, but it's good that we touch on that. Hey, this happens, right? We're human. It happened to you. I've had chronic symptoms happen, to me at different times, and it happens to a lot of people, and it's not the end of the world. We can reset our system and start again.
Oh yeah, and and I like to say I'm recovered and recovering because
Yeah,
I will get symptom flare-ups sometime. I mean, I've had a lot of stress, personal and professional, in my life lately, and I get some symptoms, and it goes down the familiar pathways. Usually for me, it's insomnia, and that was my vexing one. But now my sleep's generally really good. But when I get stressed, the insomnia and then the fatigue, but I really don't freak out because it's not chronic, right? It's just
right.
situational and I know what to do. And it's like, okay, well, they're just sensations. They're
And
sensations.
that's what you've done so much great training on. I mean, for people listening, it doesn't necessarily happen like that. And right, you've been able to develop that, but everybody can develop this ability to not have so much reaction to what's going on. Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and the thing, it takes to practice, and I'm always still working on it, as I'm sure you are too. But you start to really notice the cause and effect that when I freak out, I feel way worse.
Right.
And so it's like, well, why am I going to keep beating my head against the wall? And so just bringing, and I notice that a lot with sleep disturbance. Like if I'm not sleeping well and something's coming up, if I just kind of relax into the night and read a book or whatever, it's amazing how I have a little effect the next day, but not like a full blown fatigue attack like when I used to fight it and just be like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to be miserable tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to
Right.
do anything. And sure
Well, it's
enough,
like,
that
yeah.
zaps you.
Well, you bang your head against the wall enough times. Like hopefully we learn. And you do
Yeah.
it's a learning. I think that's what's cool. It's a learning curve in seeing it as a learning experience, a growth, right? A way of healing, like it with ups and downs and little twists and turns, but it's all positive. It's all opportunities, right, to heal, to move forward.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this work is it's like all side effects are beneficial. I have not found one side effect that's like a medication that has a negative effect. And
Right.
I think, Jim, you learn so much about yourself, what you need, maybe what aspects of yourself you're ignoring. And then I really started diving into self-compassion and the mindful self-compassion work from Kristen Neff and Chris Germer, because I mean, for one thing, I'm still a recovering perfectionist. I very much have that trait and it's still with me, although it's eased up a lot. But I also just saw, as I'm guessing you do, like with a lot of clients, the criticism and self-pressure are driving the symptoms, right?
Absolutely.
So I was looking for other tools and ways, and I love that self-compassion work, the way they present it, because it really fits with the TMS work. Um, because with
Maybe share a little
self-compassion,
bit more about it because I know of it. I haven't studied that work, but you have. So maybe share some tidbits if you want with the audience.
yeah, I took a class with Kristen Neff and Chris Germer, and so they have these 3 steps of self-compassion. So say you are experiencing fatigue and you can't go do something you want to do. So the first step would be mindfulness, which is also right what you teach, but it's really mindfulness in the body. And I love that they teach it that way. It's like, okay, well, I'm aware that maybe I'm feeling heavy, I'm also feeling sad and I'm feeling frustrated, and you really pause and acknowledge how you're feeling, could be physically, especially emotionally, and feel it in the body. So that's similar to somatic tracking, but it can just be a few moments like, okay, I'm really, and that's also what you talk about. Lots of studies show when we just say, I'm really angry right now, it turns down the activity in the amygdala. So
Nice.
that's their first step, which I love. And then their second step is common humanity, which is actually something I think we forget about in the chronic TMS community, whatever you want to call it, is I'm not alone. First of all, it's human to feel this way. Anyone going through these chronic symptoms would be frustrated, would be disappointed. And lots of other people are going through this. So it's human, it's universal, it's normal, kind of normalizing your feelings. And
Yeah.
then the third
That's a good
step
point.
is, I think, really important that, especially for those of us that have the personality traits of TMS, is self-kindness. So really tuning into, what do I really need right now? Like what's the unmet emotional need? tuning into your body, trying to listen for that. And then, speaking to yourself like you would speak to a loved one or a child going through this, and kind of seeing like, what do I need to hear? And I know it seems a little cheesy, but I can't believe how
Yeah.
satisfying it is, like to tell myself, because a lot of times we want someone else to say certain words and they don't know the words. So, I mean, I'll just say, you know what, like you've been through challenges before and you're going to get through this one. And I believe in you. And, you have what it takes. And, I just tell
Mhm.
myself the words and I see you and I hear you. And kind of speaking to the scared part of me or the child part of me, whatever you identify with. And so that's kind of the self-kindness piece.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. It's just like you're giving it to yourself. I love how you said it. Or maybe you're expecting it from somebody else or not saying it, or nobody's giving it to you, but you are being kind to yourself, right? And going through those 3 steps. I really like those 3 steps. They kind of, like you said, they interweave with this work really well.
It's interesting how they're really simpatico with the TMS work and the self-compassion work. There's a lot of studies, and I haven't seen studies that show it necessarily brings down chronic pain, but there's a lot of studies that show it brings down fear. So I feel like the self-compassion, combined with this mind-body healing is powerful for some people. Different people need different things. There's people who just say bring it on and they work through it and that works for them, but those aren't really the people that come to me. So
Right.
I
No,
don't
that's
really hear
true.
from
No,
them.
that's a good, we could even talk about that for, I mean, that I see that too, where I have people that ask me, because I send different messages out there and I said, look, some people, you're exactly right. That's helped them. And other people, that doesn't help them. And
Yeah.
I think it depends on the person, the situation, how you approach it. Some of it, that self-confidence, that real, yep, I'm fine, and that helps some people. Other times we have to take that more gentle approach, which sounds like what you talked about with the polyvagal theory as well. We want to take that avenue, which is good for everybody, right? We always want to be kind to ourselves and compassionate, because we can never have enough compassion, right, for
Well,
ourselves.
exactly. And you know what, I'm thinking of this client of mine, and he's actually, we just recorded a recovery story, so I feel free to speak about him because it's going to come out soon. But he's like this big athletic guy. Well, he wasn't athletic for years because of his decades of chronic pain, but he's, like a tough guy. And he found that self-compassion piece was so big for him because, but it didn't come from a place of weakness. Like it really came from like, you can do it, you've got this, and he would like cheer himself on when he ran through 9 days of excruciating pain, and the ninth day it turned off. Like in an instant the pain turned off.
Wow.
And he kind of used a lot of self-compassion, but it was like, you've got this, keep going, I love you, I believe in you, I want you to be happy. So it's not just to sort of say, yeah, it doesn't have to be a sign of
That's
weakness,
right.
it's a sign of
Well,
strength.
sometimes that, I will tell people standing up for yourself, setting a boundary or that's a form of self-compassion, right? Setting a
Oh
boundary for
yes.
yourself. And that's the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself than to take abuse or like what you say about him,
Yes.
he's like cheering himself on and getting himself up in self-confidence. And that's the best thing he could do for himself instead of putting himself down. Oh, I can't do it, right? I'm never going to be able to do it.
Completely. And yeah, he did that and just is
That's
running
amazing.
6 miles a day. I was like, if you weren't in Australia, I'd hire you as my personal trainer, but tell him not to work me quite that hard. But
Right. So he
yeah.
kind of went for it. And that's the other approach, right? Where some people you see that they can really just go for it. And I've seen that too. And they bust through and then it relents. And I always tell people in theory, yes, that anybody could do that. But he had some ingredients he brought to the table, right? That he kept going with.
Yes. He said he's always had that kind of personality, like an all-in kind of guy. So you have to work with who you are. Like I'm not really like that. I mean, I don't have that kind of intense personality. And if I push myself too hard when I was recovering or even now, it will totally backfire. Like my
Right.
system will kind of freak out. I'm just more sensitive. Less stimulation will throw me off than
Yeah.
somebody like that. So yeah, I think you have to understand your mind body constitution and where you are in life, what kind of supports you have, and just really be compassionate and, try not to compare yourself to other people and think, why didn't that happen to me? Because every person has their own unique puzzle pieces, their own unique healing, like the pieces they need to come back into balance. And everyone with these mind body symptoms can. It's like finding those pieces for you. And it might be, for a lot of people, it's like learning not to pressure and push themselves so much and just to be more gentle with themselves or to enjoy life more. So yeah, it's very different for each person.
Yeah.
No, I think you just broke up a bit. Oh, there you're back. Okay.
Yeah, you're back. Lost you for a second.
Okay, good.
Good old Zoom is not perfect. Perfectionism doesn't
Even though
exist.
we're not, no, right, exactly. Even though we're probably 30 miles down the road from each other, but
Right. I could probably open my screen here and wave to you at your
yeah,
house.
we'll just use like a megaphone.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So this course that's coming up, maybe share a little more. You put, again, so much time and effort, and I know you researched and looked at the evidence and tried to make this thing really powerful and helpful for people. So anything else you want to share about the upcoming course with people?
Yeah. So it's called Be Your Own Medicine. And it's a live 8-week course where we'll meet for 2 hours over Zoom. And I really lay out, different aspects of the science, how to diagnose yourself, going into retraining your brain with graded exposure and affirmations, a whole module on emotions, a module on personality traits and self-compassion. And then the 6th module is kind of looking for the message or the wisdom in the symptoms and where they're guiding you. What do you really want to do with your life? What lights you up? What gives you energy? And so there's about 18 somatic meditations. So Jim, I mean, I've literally listened to your meditations hundreds of times. I probably have some of them memorized. I love them, and they help me heal. And so I'm obsessed with these. And so I've created different kinds of somatic tracking.
18 of them. Wow.
18, yeah. And just different ones. A lot are things like somatic tracking, but some are just different ones I've learned along the way to regulate the nervous system, release muscle tension. Even one of them I've really liked recently, which is kind of letting the symptoms sort of express with sounds or movements and or words. And so, yeah, so there's these meditations, there's different writing exercises. And I say to people, you don't have to do it all. I didn't do much writing at all, but some people prefer that to the somatic meditation. So I offer both avenues. And it's going to be a really supportive community. We have a private website where people can really connect. I've brought on a community facilitator, this amazing woman who just loves kind of facilitating community, and me and a couple other assistants will be answering questions. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I've just found for people who feel stuck, it can help walk them through a process.
Yeah. And for the audience, who would be appropriate for? Is it just chronic fatigue, brain fog, or is it specific to that? Or are there other conditions too that people have that might benefit from it?
Yeah, any TMS, mind body symptom, because it really is all about, I lay out Sarno's work, Schubner's work, your work we include, Jim, and I'm excited you're going to be appearing in one of our live Q&A sessions. We have 2 live Q&As for 2 hours. People get to ask questions, and it'll be you and me answering questions. I think that's on October 6th. Yeah. And people can pre-submit questions because a lot of people are, around the world. So yeah, I really like laying out the knowledge. And now I'm actually forgetting, what did you ask?
You answered the question. I just wanted to make sure people knew that they didn't just need to have your symptoms.
Oh yeah, the symptoms.
On the course.
Sorry. No, it's any TMS mind body symptom. Now, I did put together as like the week, in fact, that you come on for the Q&A, there's this 10 to 12 page fatigue guide that I put together with like everything that helped me and that I've gleaned from all my clients with chronic fatigue. So there's a fatigue guide, and there's also like there's 2 sleep or insomnia guides. So those are just extra because a lot of people will have fatigue and they really want to know how to apply it. So I will address that. I anticipate a lot of people with long COVID will be in the course, and I'll just address the questions, but it's these symptoms, they all have the same cause and the same cure. So it doesn't really
Right.
matter, but
Doesn't
I
matter.
will offer the nuances like we talked about. If your system's presenting with fatigue and that kind of freeze shutdown response, I will address how perhaps you would treat that a little bit different than um, anxiety, for instance. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And I'm encouraging all, my listeners and so forth, if you want a group experience and learn more, a lot more, you're going to learn so much from Rebecca. So give it a chance if you're struggling, if you're not want to do one-on-one sessions or can't afford it or whatnot, it's a great, great resource that you're putting out there. So I'm hoping that a lot of people sign up and get involved in this. And I'm going to post also a link on the YouTube channel here that you guys, if you go to the notes, you can click on it if you're interested in learning more information. Maybe share where they could go as well directly to your site if they want.
Yeah, so they can go to RebeccaTolin.com. You'll see the course page. It's RebeccaTolin.com/course. So RebeccaTolin. And then there's just lots of information on the course. And it's the only time I'm teaching it this year. I probably won't teach it again until next spring. And so, it's my hope it'll really give people an infusion and a jump start. And then coaching can be more effective if they need it at all, because they kind of have a baseline knowledge, which I know they get so much of here on your channel as well. And it'll just have, lots of practices and kind of the how to implement some of this methodology and philosophy.
That's awesome. That's the most important piece, right? Once you understand it, is the how to. How do you do it?
That's
People ask me all the time, well, what do we do? How do we approach it? So
Yes.
I'm excited. I'm really excited for you, Rebecca. You had an amazing recovery yourself. You did a lot of work, right? So people know you put the time in, but as you're saying, anybody can get better. You're living proof of that. And now you've gone on and now you're helping other people. So it's just really, really cool to see.
Jim, you passed the torch. And I'm glad you're still carrying the torch. And now I'm also carrying the torch. And, like I'm just as passionate as you are. It's, as you know, like you recover from these symptoms but you regain yourself and your life and so much more than just getting rid of symptoms. And you just want to share it. So I'm really excited to share this work. And I'm so grateful to you. I'm grateful for your YouTube channel. I always send people to your YouTube channel. I send people to work with you. And sometimes people will say, oh yeah, but you recovered from fatigue. So they come to me. I was like, yeah, but Jim coached me through that. He knows exactly, how to do that and just to treat it like a sensation. So I'm really happy to be now a colleague and a friend, and so appreciate you.
And you're such a light to the world. And I know people will say it about you. So the way you present it, the way you put it out there, you're just going to help so many people. So I'm just super excited. And like you said, the torch keeps getting passed on. So people out there, let's pick up the torch, heal yourself, and then let's pass it on to somebody else, because everybody needs this information.
Exactly. We need all of you that's watching to pick up the torch and pass it on too, because you have that ability and it just feels so good. Whether you want to just go back to your life, then being a teacher or a parent or whatever, or whether you want to become a mind body coach like Jim and I are, it's just, we need all of you. So we know you have that potential to heal.
Yeah, that's it. Potential to heal. Well, awesome talking to you, Rebecca. Great to catch up. Hear a little more about your story, how you're doing, excited about the course. So again, people, you can find the link on my site here. You can go to Rebecca's website. And if you have any questions, I guess they can reach out to you, or if you post it on the YouTube, if you want to check in, or can they ask you directly if they have any questions at all? Or
oh yeah, absolutely. And probably the best way is to click on the link from your YouTube video. They can click on that and they'll just see where they can ask questions, and we're happy to get back to them.
Okay, wonderful. Good to see you as usual.
Good to see you too. All right, take care, Jim.
Until next time, take care of yourself.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye now.